Hello, TI family. I'm Edwin Jones from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I've never said what I'm going to say, either publicly or privately, on why my entire family became perps. First of all, I come from a very loose-knit family. Uh, it's a man-hating family. It's a jealous family. Secondly, it seems that the foundation of an effective conspiracy starts with one's immediate family. That marks the beginning of separation elsewhere. In my case, it was my mother, father, and brother. And once the police that I sued got them to do their bidding, the rest of the family, known to unbeknownst to them, just fell in line. Let's start with my mother. Mothers are the most believable of all family members. They are traditionally the backbone of the family. And once mothers are controlled, the rest of the family become dominoes. Add to that the participation of my father and brother, and who could question their motives? After all, it's natural to assume that they all can't be wrong, or they can't be lying. Now, my mother, unfortunately, was a perp waiting to happen because she never bonded with me, as she and my father were on bad terms, and she took that out on me as a child. The only time she spent with me was whipping me like a racehorse and talking to me like a stranger. She left home when I was 15 after I became oblivious to her physical and psychological torture. She was all the while going to church and pretending to be a Christian. Now, my father was no bargain. He spent all of his time working as a mechanic and chasing women. He had an answer for everything, and it usually was wrong. He even approached my first wife before her and I were married to have sex with him. He was also a perp waiting to happen. I got no ethical or moral foundation from him or my mother, and basically raised myself in seclusion and isolation. My mother was hateful and my father was stupid. Both claimed to be Christians. Both were churchgoers. And I learned about religious hypocrisy at a very early age. I also learned how to shut down my feelings along with the physical pain at an early age. Now, those negative attributes were indispensable in my graduating from college and getting a black belt in karate, but they were harmful to me in every other aspect of my life. Now, I had a brother who was 4 years older than me, but we were not close growing up. He preferred to run the streets until he dropped out of high school. Then he joined the Marine Corps. We were not close even after that. I sent myself off to college and got a black belt. I'm the only one on either side of the family to do so. But here's my family, though. I got no congratulations afterwards. Not one. So that is the basis of why my family was easy to flip on me and become perps. And if your family is like mine, you will be on your own. I will suggest a solution later at the end. But now, let's discuss how. Now, most people have a breaking point, no matter how strong and determined they are. And the police/government that I sued took what meant the most to my family, and then he manipulated them by it. I asked my mother during the initial part of the police fiasco why everyone was acting strangely and against me, and what happened to those same Christians who say they fear the Lord, not the devil. Her reply was, and I do quote, I remember it word for word. She said, "The way things are supposed to be is not the way things are." And she was ice cold when she said it. I knew I was in deep trouble. You see, my mother is heavily dependent on her disability check and doctors who have her highly dependent on life-saving drugs, and she did not want those things taken away. I asked my brother if somebody was promised to win the lottery if they set me up, and he let it slip that sometimes your kids can't get credit if you don't go along. My only so-called Christian brother worked with the police so his daughter could get financial credit, the mark of the beast. Now, up to this point, my mother and brother offered passive compliance. Now, my Christian father, a deacon, however, allowed the police to enter his home where I was sleeping and allowed the police to gas me while I was asleep so that they could go through my court papers and other things. They decided, I guess, to let me keep damaging discovery papers because I guess they figured I could not use them anyway. Also, my father had a garage built when I was a kid, and he worked on cars. And he didn't pay taxes on any of that money for 30 plus years. He was very good at what he did. And his customers included lawyers, doctors, and a judge. And I suspected he was threatened with jail time if he didn't cooperate. Now, perhaps the answer is also that the family decided that it's best to sacrifice me for the sake of the rest of the family. And like I said before, their resistance was mostly passive. They isolated me while probably telling the rest of the family that I needed help. And that's standard operating procedure. I don't see my granddaughter, who is 6. Me and his mother divorced when he was 3. She's a Christian and a retired school teacher. But after our divorce, she never encouraged him to be close to me, even though I potty trained him, taught him to read at 3, took him to work with me occasionally, took him to my karate classes, the YMCA, the Boys Club. I enrolled him into the Cub Scouts, taught him to ride a bicycle during the summers that I had custody. I also taught him to grow a garden. But during the most impressionable time of his preteen life, in the beginning of my conspiracy, she took him out of the racially mixed scout group that I had him enrolled in and put him into an all-black scout troop, where he became condescending, bored, and surrounded with nefarious ne'er-do-wells and other type of thugs. And she did this during the early part of his conspiracy, during the most impressionable time of his life, and she did it just to thwart me. And she's been a perp since 1990, right along with the rest of the family. She hated me more than she loved her own son. She made it easy for him to fail. I tried to make him earn and learn. And the result of that interference is that my son and I don't communicate. So be it. Now, I have no expectations of ever seeing my granddaughter again. But I write letters and send cards to her at least once a month at her last known address. All the letters are dated, scanned, copied, and numbered. My granddaughter and son are staying at my ex's house, who has a history of opening my son's mail. So I don't worry about whether or not she receives them. I only want to be able to produce those copies of those letters one day if she ever looks me up and asks me, "Where you been, Grandpa?" I intend to show her and tell her the whole truth. I won't make a deal with the devil in the meantime, not even to see my granddaughter. You see, my entire family has shown me that once you make a deal with the devil, they control you for the rest of your life. And I prefer to die on my feet than live on my knees like they do. And I pray that I won't change. Now, it's not easy being completely isolated, but a small part of that responsibility is mine. And I have learned a bit of patience and acceptance since attending Buddhist meditation sessions. That led me to the Hindu temple, and it led me to study philosophy on peace. And because of those two practices, I was able to go back to the Christian church and attend Bible study. And people, I swore I would never go back. You can never say never, right? Now, since I'm emptying my heart out to you, the only family member that I could ever trust was my grandmother on my father's side. She would not have let this go down like it did. She was tough, and she was a real Christian. She died in 1969, and I'm still not over her death. In conclusion, I was forced to abandon my entire system of beliefs without having anything to replace them. That's devastating. And that system was in three parts. Number one, that blood is thicker than water. No. That Christians offer spiritual sanctuary. No. And that there is truth in government. Also no. This is what COINTEL PSYOPs are all about. The destabilization of the familiar. And very few people survive that while isolated. Does this all sound familiar to you, TI family? If it does, I hope I have helped you to understand and to deal with it. So be safe out there. The devil wants you dead.